The stars looked different from the bridge of the Corvin flagship Void Render. Commander Taman stood with his arms behind his back, watching the dark space ahead. His yellow eyes reflected the soft blue light from the control panels. Today would be another easy victory for the Corvin Empire. "Commander," called Science Officer Byung-ho from his station. "We have a contact on long-range sensors. It appears to be a human vessel." Taman's mouth curved into what humans might call a smile, though it showed far too many sharp teeth. The humans were the newest species they had discovered. Their worlds were rich with resources, and their technology seemed primitive. Perfect targets for conquest. "What type of vessel?" Taman asked, walking closer to the sensor display. "It appears to be a simple transport shuttle, sir. Very small. Maybe 50 meters in length. The energy signature is weak." Taman nodded. This was exactly what he had expected. The humans always sent their diplomats in small, harmless ships. They would beg for peace, offer tribute, and surrender their worlds without much of a fight. It was the same pattern he had seen 47 times before. "Signal the fleet," Taman ordered. "Have all ships move to surround the human vessel. Standard intimidation formation." Around the Void Render, 7 other massive warships began to move. Each one was over 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Together they formed a wall of metal and death that had never failed to frighten their enemies into submission. Far ahead of them, the small human shuttle continued on its course. It seemed so tiny compared to the Corvin fleet, like a mouse surrounded by hungry cats. Inside the shuttle, Captain So-hee Kim sat in her command chair, watching the alien ships on her display. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her brown eyes were calm despite the dangerous situation. She had been waiting for this moment for 3 years. "Captain," said Engineer Jae-won Park from his station behind her, "the Corvins are taking positions around us. 8 heavy cruisers, just as intelligence predicted." So he nodded without turning around. "Any changes to their formation?" "No, ma'am. They're following their standard pattern, same as they used at Proxima Colony and New Seoul." Weapons Specialist Hana Lee looked up from her console. "Their weapons are charging, Captain. They're trying to scare us." "Let them," so he said quietly. "Nav, how long until we reach the target coordinates?" Navigator Dong-ho Choi checked his instruments. 14 minutes, Captain. We're right on schedule." So he finally turned to look at her crew. There were only 12 people aboard their ship, but each one had been chosen for this mission with great care. They all knew what was really happening here. The Corvins thought they were about to capture a helpless diplomatic vessel. They had no idea what was really coming for them. "Remember, everyone," so he said in a calm voice. "We maintain radio silence until I give the order. Let them think we're just another frightened human ship." The truth was very different. Their vessel was not a simple shuttle. It was the Silent Thunder, humanity's most advanced warship. Every line of its hull had been designed to look harmless while hiding the most powerful weapons ever created. The Corvins would learn this lesson, but it would be the last thing they ever learned. On the Corvin flagship, Admiral Kang Dae entered the bridge. He was taller than most of his species, with deep scars across his face from many battles. His reputation was built on the complete destruction of alien civilizations that dared to resist the Corvin Empire. "Status report," Kang Dae demanded as he took his position at the center of the bridge. "The human vessel is proceeding on course," Commander Tae-min replied. "It has not responded to our presence. Either they haven't detected us or they're too frightened to move." "Probably both," Kang Dae said with a harsh laugh. "These humans are supposed to be intelligent, but they keep making the same mistakes. They think they can negotiate with us. Should we open communications, Admiral?" "Not yet. Let them sweat for a while longer. Fear makes them more willing to cooperate." Kang Dae had used this tactic many times. First show overwhelming force, then demand complete surrender, finally strip the enemy worlds of everything valuable before moving on to the next target. It was simple, effective, and profitable. "Sir," Weapons Officer Sunmi called out, "I'm getting some strange readings from the human ship." "What kind of readings?" Taman asked. "It's hard to explain. Their energy signature keeps changing. One moment it reads as a simple chemical drive system. The next moment, something else entirely." Admiral Kang Dae frowned. "Equipment malfunction?" "I don't think so, sir. I've run diagnostics 3 times. Our sensors are working perfectly. Then it must be some kind of human trick. Primitive electronic warfare, perhaps. Pay it no mind. But Sunmi continued to stare at her displays with growing concern. The human vessel's readings were unlike anything she had ever seen. Sometimes it appeared to be exactly what it looked like, a small civilian transport. Other times the sensors detected energy patterns that seemed impossible for such a tiny ship. Inside the Silent Thunder, the crew continued their preparations. Engineer Jae-won worked at his station, making final adjustments to systems that the Corvins couldn't even imagine. Every few minutes he would look at a special display that showed the alien fleet's positions. "All ships are in position," he reported to Captain So-hee. "They formed a perfect circle around us. No escape routes, just like their manual says they should." "Perfect," So-hee replied. "That means they're all within optimal range." Hana Lee smiled as she checked her weapon systems. The Corvins had no idea that their intimidation formation was actually the best possible setup for what was about to happen. They had arranged themselves exactly where humanity wanted them. "Captain," Dong-ho said from the navigation station, "we've reached the target coordinates. The fleet is in perfect position." So he took a deep breath. This was the moment that would change everything. The Corvins thought they were about to capture another helpless human ship. Instead, they were about to discover that humanity was not the weak species they had believed. "Initiate Phase 1, she ordered quietly. Deep inside the Silent Thunder, systems that had never been used in actual combat began to wake up. The ship's true nature was about to be revealed, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Admiral Kangdae decided it was time to begin the intimidation process. He had waited long enough for the humans to make the first move. Now he would show them the true power of the Corvin Empire. "Open a channel to the human vessel," he commanded. Communication Officer Yu Jin worked at her console for several seconds, then looked up with confusion. "Sir, they're not responding to our hails. Are their communications working?" "Yes, Admiral. We can detect their transmitters. They're just choosing not to answer." Kangdae's eyes narrowed. Most species would be desperately trying to communicate by now, begging for mercy or attempting to negotiate. The human's silence was either incredible stupidity or surprising courage. He suspected stupidity. "Prepare boarding parties," he ordered. "If they won't talk, we'll take their ship and make them talk." On the other side of the bridge, Science Officer Byung-ho was becoming more concerned about the sensor readings. Every few minutes, the human ship seemed to change. Not physically. He could see it clearly on the visual display. But the energy signatures kept shifting in ways that made no sense. "Commander Taemin," he called out, "you need to see this." Taemin walked over to the science station and looked at the displays. "What am I looking at?" "These are the sensor readings from the human ship over the last 10 minutes, Byung-ho explained. "Look at the power output measurements." The graph showed wild fluctuations. For most of the time, the human vessel registered as having minimal power. Exactly what you would expect from a small civilian transport. But every few minutes there were brief spikes that suggested something much more powerful. "Could be engine problems," Taemin suggested. "These humans are primitive. Their technology probably breaks down all the time." "That's what I thought at first," Byung-ho said. "But look at this." He brought up another display. "These spikes aren't random. They're happening in a specific pattern, almost like the ship is testing something." Taemin stared at the data for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "You're overthinking this. It's just a broken human ship with malfunctioning equipment. Don't let your imagination run wild." But Byung-ho wasn't convinced. In his years as a science officer, he had learned to trust his instincts. Something about this situation felt wrong. The humans were acting too calm, too confident for people who were about to be captured by a superior force. Inside the Silent Thunder, Captain So-hee received a coded message through quantum entanglement communication. It was from Earth Command, transmitted instantly across hundreds of light years using technology the Corvins didn't even know was possible. "Message from home," Communications Specialist Minho announced quietly. "Directive 77 is confirmed. We are authorized to proceed with full demonstration." So-hee nodded. Directive 77 meant that Earth's leadership had decided to reveal humanity's true capabilities to the galaxy. No more hiding, no more pretending to be weak and primitive. The time for deception was over. "Jae-won," she called to her engineer, "begin the activation sequence for Project Mjolnir." Engineer Jae-won Park's fingers moved across his control panel with practiced precision. Deep within the ship, Systems that had cost Earth's entire military budget for 3 years began to come online. The power core started its transformation from a simple fusion reactor into something much more dangerous. Activation sequence initiated, Jaewon reported. Estimated time to full readiness, 8 minutes. Hana, what's the status of our defensive systems? Weapons specialist Hana Lee checked her instruments. Energy absorption matrix is online and ready. We can handle anything they throw at us, so he smiled grimly. The Corvins were about to discover that their overwhelming firepower was not as overwhelming as they thought. On the Corvin flagship, the boarding party was almost ready. 40 heavily armed soldiers waited in the launch bay, preparing to storm what they believed was a helpless human transport. Their leader, Captain Wu Jin, had done this dozens of times before. Humans usually surrendered as soon as they saw Corvin soldiers. Remember, Wu Jin told his troops over the comm system, we want prisoners for interrogation. Try not to kill all of them. The soldiers laughed. Capturing human vessels was easy work, much easier than fighting real warriors. Launch bay is ready, Wu Jin reported to the bridge. Awaiting your orders, Admiral. Stand by, Kang Dae replied. We're going to try one more intimidation tactic first. The Admiral had decided to show the humans what they were facing. He ordered all 8 Corvin vessels to power up their main weapons. The massive energy cannons that could destroy cities began to charge with deadly power. Human vessel, Kang Dae broadcast on all frequencies. This is Admiral Kang Dae of the Corvin Imperial Fleet. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately or we will destroy your ship. Inside the Silent Thunder, the crew heard the message but showed no signs of fear. They had been preparing for this moment for years. Should we respond, Captain? Asked communication specialist Min Ho. Not yet, so he replied. Let them think we're scared. It will make the revelation even more shocking. Navigator Dong Ho Choi was monitoring the Corvin ship's positions. All enemy vessels are maintaining their formation. They haven't moved closer or further away. Good. That means they still think they're in control of the situation. Engineer Jaewon looked up from his station. Captain, I'm reading some unusual energy patterns from the Corvin ships. They're charging their main weapons. Are they targeting us? All of them are. If they fire simultaneously, it would normally be enough to vaporize a ship this size. So his expression didn't change. Normally, yes. But we're not a normal ship, are we? On the Corvin flagship, Weapons Officer Sunmi was still troubled by the sensor readings from the human vessel. The energy spikes were becoming more frequent and more powerful. Whatever the humans were doing over there, it was building toward something. Admiral, she called out, I strongly recommend we maintain our distance from the human ship. These readings are very unusual. Admiral Kang Dae turned to look at her with annoyance. Unusual how? The power output is increasing steadily. Either they're about to have a catastrophic reactor failure or... She paused, not wanting to voice her growing suspicion. Or what? Or they're not what they appear to be. Kang Dae laughed harshly. They're humans. Primitive, weak humans. Stop jumping at shadows. But Sunmi continued to watch her displays with growing alarm. The energy readings were now far beyond what any civilian transport should be capable of producing. Something was very wrong with this situation. Inside the Silent Thunder, the moment of truth was approaching. Project Mjolnir was almost ready, and the Corvin fleet had positioned itself exactly where humanity needed it to be. 6 minutes to full activation, Jaewon reported. Captain So-hee looked at her crew one last time. These 12 people were about to change the course of galactic history. After today, no alien species would ever underestimate humanity again. Prepare for final phase activation, she ordered. It's time to show them what Earth is really capable of. The moment had finally arrived. Captain So-hee Kim gave the order that would change everything. Jaewon dropped the camouflage. Show them what we really are. Engineer Jaewon Park's hands moved across his control panel. Initiating hull transformation. Visual deception systems offline in 3, 2, 1, now. Outside in the cold darkness of space, the human shuttle began to change. What had appeared to be simple metal panels started to retract, revealing weapons ports that seemed to bend light around them. The ship's true size became apparent as sections of the hull that had been hidden by advanced camouflage technology suddenly became visible. On the bridge of the Corvin flagship, Science Officer Byung-ho stared at his sensors in complete shock. Admiral, the human ship. It's... It's not what we thought. Admiral Kangday rushed to the sensor station. What do you mean? The vessel is much larger than it appeared. Our sensors are now reading it as over 400 meters in length. How is that possible? The visual display showed the transformation happening in real time. The small, harmless-looking shuttle was revealing itself to be something completely different. Weapon ports covered every surface, and the hull seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. Some kind of cloaking technology? Commander Timon asked. More advanced than anything in our databases, Byung-ho replied with fear in his voice. And the energy readings. They're off the scale now. Inside the Silent Thunder, weapons specialist Hana Lee smiled as her systems came fully online. All weapon systems are now active, Captain. Project Mjolnir is ready to fire on your command. Navigator Dong-ho Choi updated his tactical display. Corvin fleet is maintaining position. I don't think they understand what they're looking at. Captain So-hee stood up from her command chair. It was time to give the aliens one chance to survive this encounter. She had orders to make the demonstration as clear as possible. Open a channel to the Corvin fleet, she ordered. Communication specialist Min-ho worked at his console. Channel open, Captain. So-hee's voice was calm and steady as she spoke to the alien fleet. Corvin vessels, this is Captain So-hee Kim of the Earth warship Silent Thunder. You have entered human territory and threatened our citizens. By the Colonial Defense Act of 2387, you have committed an act of war against humanity. On the Corvin flagship, every officer on the bridge listened to the human captain's words with growing disbelief. Earth warship? The humans weren't supposed to have warships. Intelligence reports said they were barely capable of interplanetary travel. This must be some kind of bluff, Admiral Kangday said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. Captain So-hee continued speaking. You have one opportunity to withdraw from this system immediately. This is your only warning. If you do not comply, we will be forced to demonstrate why threatening humanity is a mistake. Admiral Kangday's pride overcame his growing concern. No primitive human was going to threaten him and his fleet. He had conquered 47 worlds and destroyed countless enemy ships. One human vessel, no matter how strange, could not stand against the might of the Corvin Empire. Human captain, he broadcast back. You are outnumbered 8-1. Your single ship cannot possibly defeat our entire fleet. Surrender now and we may allow some of your crew to live. Inside the Silent Thunder, the crew heard the aliens' response and exchanged glances. Captain So-hee shook her head sadly. They've made their choice. J1 is Project Mjolnir at full power. Yes, Captain. All systems are green. We have full power and targeting solutions for all enemy vessels. Hana, are the defensive matrices ready? Weapons specialist Hana Lee nodded. Energy absorption system is online. We can handle their entire fleet's firepower without taking any damage. So he sat back down in her command chair. Very well. Let's show them what happens when you threaten humanity. Admiral Kangday had heard enough talking. It was time to end this farce. All ships target the human vessel. Fire at will. 8 massive Corvin warships opened fire simultaneously. Hundreds of energy beams and plasma bolts streaked across space toward the Silent Thunder. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The aliens expected to see the human ship disappear in a brilliant explosion. Instead, something impossible happened. The energy beams struck the human vessel and simply vanished. Every single shot was absorbed by the ship's defensive matrix without causing any visible damage. The Silent Thunder sat in space completely unharmed, as if the massive barrage had been nothing more than gentle rain. Impossible, Weapons Officer Sunmi gasped. Our sensors show direct hits, but there's no damage at all. Fire again, Admiral Kangday screamed. All weapons. Maximum power! The Corvin fleet unleashed a second barrage, this time with every weapon they had. Missiles, energy cannons, plasma torpedoes. Everything they could fire streaked toward the human ship. The space around the Silent Thunder lit up like a star as hundreds of weapons struck its hull. Again, nothing happened. The human vessel absorbed the entire attack without showing any signs of damage. Inside the Silent Thunder, Engineer Jae-won watched his power readings with satisfaction. Energy absorption complete, Captain. Their attacks have actually charged our weapons to 120% capacity. So he smiled grimly. The Corvins had just made the worst mistake possible. They had given humanity's ultimate weapon even more power to work with. Thank them for the extra energy, she said. Hana, target all 8 enemy vessels. Prepare to fire Project Mjolnir. Hana Lee's fingers danced across her control panel. Targeting solutions confirmed. All enemy ships are locked on. Mjolnir is ready to fire on your command. The weapon that was about to be unleashed had taken Earth's best scientists 15 years to develop. It didn't just destroy matter, it removed it from existence entirely. Anything hit by Mjolnir would simply cease to be, as if it had never existed in the first place. On the Corvin flagship, panic was beginning to spread. Their most powerful weapons had no effect on the human ship at all. Science Officer Byung-ho was frantically running scans, trying to understand what was happening. Admiral, the human vessel's energy output is increasing again. Whatever they're about to do, it's going to be much more powerful than anything we've seen. Admiral Kang Dae stared at the tactical display with growing fear. For the first time in his military career, he was facing an enemy he didn't understand, an enemy that might actually be stronger than his fleet. All ships prepare to retreat, he ordered quietly. But it was too late. Captain Sohee had given them their chance to leave peacefully. They had chosen to attack instead. Now they would face the consequences of that choice. Fire, she commanded. Project Mjolnir activated. 8 beams of impossible light reached out from the silent thunder, each one targeting a Corvin warship with perfect precision. The beams moved faster than thought, faster than fear, faster than regret. The Corvin fleet was about to learn that humanity was not the primitive species they had believed. They were about to discover that threatening Earth came with a price that few civilizations could afford to pay. Admiral Kang Dae had just enough time to realize that he had made the greatest mistake of his life before the beam of light reached his flagship. The 8 beams of light from Project Mjolnir crossed the darkness of space in complete silence. Each beam was perfectly aimed at a Corvin warship, and each beam carried the power to unmake matter itself. Commander Tae-min on the Corvin heavy cruiser, Starpiercer, watched the approaching light with confusion. It didn't look like any weapon he had ever seen. The beam seemed to bend reality around it, making the space it passed through shimmer like water. Evasive maneuvers, he shouted to his pilot. "Get us out of the path of that beam!" But the Starpiercer was too large and too slow to avoid what was coming. The beam of light touched the front of the ship and something terrible began to happen. The metal hull didn't melt or explode. Instead, it simply stopped existing. The beam moved through the ship like it was made of empty air, and everything it touched vanished completely. Not destroyed, not vaporized, simply gone, as if it had never been built. Commander Tae-min had exactly 3 seconds to watch his ship disappear around him before the beam reached the bridge. His last thought was a desperate wish that he had listened to Science Officer Byung-ho's warnings. Then he too ceased to exist along with every atom of his body. The same scene played out across all 8 Corvin vessels. The massive warships that had seemed so powerful just moments before were being erased from existence with surgical precision. Their shields, armor, and weapons meant nothing against a force that simply deleted matter from reality. On the heavy cruiser, Voidhammer, Captain Sung-hee watched in horror as 3 other ships in her view simply vanished. One moment they were there, the next moment there was only empty space. Not even debris remained. "What kind of weapon is that?" she whispered. Her weapons officer turned to answer, but then the beam of light reached their ship. The Voidhammer began to disappear from the rear section forward. The engine room, the crew quarters, the storage bays, all of it simply stopped existing as the beam moved through the ship like death itself. Captain Sung-hee tried to send a warning to the Corvin High Command, but her communications array had already been unmade. She had time for one final scream of terror before the beam reached the bridge and erased her from the universe. Admiral Kang Dae on the flagship Void Render lasted slightly longer than the others, but only because his ship was the largest. He watched 6 of his heavy cruisers disappear completely, leaving nothing behind but empty space and his own growing terror. "Emergency jump," he screamed at his navigation officer. "Get us out of here now." "I'm trying, sir." The jump drive isn't responding. What the Admiral didn't know was that the human ship was projecting a field that prevented faster-than-light travel. The Silent Thunder wasn't just destroying the Corvin fleet. It was making sure none of them escaped to warn their empire about humanity's true power. "Send a message to High Command," Kang Dae ordered desperately. "Tell them the humans aren't what we thought. Tell them they have weapons beyond our understanding." Communication Officer Yu Jin worked frantically at her console. "I'm trying, sir, but something is jamming our long-range communications." The beam of light was getting closer to the Void Render now. Kang Dae could see it approaching, moving through the ship with terrible certainty. Bulkheads, equipment, crew members. Everything it touched simply vanished without a trace. In his final moments, Admiral Kangday managed to send one desperate quantum burst transmission toward Corvin space. It was barely a few words. The humans, they're not what we thought. The transmission cut off as the beam reached the bridge and erased the Admiral from existence. The mighty Void Render, flagship of the Corvin Imperial Fleet, followed its sisters into nothingness. Inside the Silent Thunder, the crew watched their displays with grim satisfaction. 8 massive warships had been reduced to nothing in less than 30 seconds. The space around them was now completely empty except for their own vessel. All targets eliminated, reported weapons specialist Hana Lee. Project Mjolnir performed exactly as designed. 0 enemy survivors detected. Engineer Jaewon Park checked his power readings. Weapon systems cycling down to standby mode. Core temperature is within normal limits. We can fire again immediately if needed. Captain So-hee Kim nodded slowly. The demonstration had been perfect. The Corvin fleet was gone, erased so completely that future historians might wonder if it had ever existed at all. The message to the galaxy would be clear. Threatening humanity came with consequences beyond imagination. Any signs of additional enemy forces? She asked Navigator Dong Ho Choi. Negative, Captain. Long-range sensors show no other vessels in this system. The Corvin staging area they were building has been abandoned. So he wasn't surprised. Intelligence had indicated that the Corvins were preparing to launch a massive invasion of Earth's solar system. 200 warships had been gathering in the Outer Rim territories, ready to strike at the heart of human space. But those ships would never attack now. The demonstration had served its purpose. Minho, did we record everything? She asked her communication specialist. Yes, Captain. Full sensor recordings of the engagement, including the alien fleet's destruction. Earth Command will have complete documentation of Project Mjolnir's effectiveness. Good. Prepare the message package for transmission to all known galactic frequencies. Make sure every spacefaring species receives it. The message would be simple but unmistakable. It would show the destruction of the Corvin fleet and include a clear warning. Humanity was not the weak, primitive species that many aliens believed them to be. Any attempt to threaten human worlds or citizens would be met with absolute retaliation. Communications specialist Minho worked at his console for several minutes, preparing the broadcast. The message would be transmitted using quantum communication arrays hidden throughout the galaxy. Within hours, every major civilization would know what had happened here. Message ready for transmission? Captain, send it, so he ordered. Across the galaxy, alien leaders would soon receive the recording of the battle. They would watch 8 powerful warships disappear without a trace. They would see humanity's true capabilities revealed for the first time. And they would understand that the balance of power in the galaxy had suddenly shifted. On distant worlds, military commanders would cancel planned attacks on human colonies. Diplomatic corps would rush to offer peace treaties. Trade guilds would compete to establish profitable relationships with Earth. The entire political structure of the galaxy would change overnight. Jaewon, Captain So-hee said, begin the recharge sequence for Project Mjolnir. Earth Command wants our weapons ready for continuous operation. Already begun, Captain. The system will be fully recharged in 6 hours. So, he smiled grimly. One demonstration had been enough to destroy the Corvin threat, but there were other hostile species in the galaxy. Other civilizations that might need to learn the same lesson. The Silent Thunder would be ready for them. Set course for Earth, she commanded. Our mission here is complete. As the human warship began to move away from the empty battlefield, space around it began to shimmer. Other ships were decloaking, dozens of them, all bearing the insignia of the Earth Defense Force. They had been watching, waiting, ready to respond if the Silent Thunder had somehow failed in its demonstration. The galaxy had expected humanity to send a diplomatic shuttle. Instead, Earth had sent a message written in the language of annihilation. The age of human weakness was over. The age of human dominance had begun. The recording studio aboard the Silent Thunder was small, but equipped with the most advanced communication technology humanity had ever built. Captain So-hee Kim sat in front of the camera, her uniform neat and her expression serious. Behind her, a display showed the empty space where the Corvin fleet had been just hours before. Recording in 3, 2, 1, mark, said communications specialist Minho from behind the camera. So he looked directly into the lens as she began to speak. Her voice was calm, measured, but carried an unmistakable authority that would be heard across the galaxy. To all members of the Galactic Council and their affiliated species, I am Captain So-hee Kim of the Earth Defense Force warship, Silent Thunder. What you are about to see is a demonstration of humanity's response to unprovoked aggression against our colonies and citizens. The display behind her switched to show the recorded battle. 8 massive Corvin warships surrounded what appeared to be a small human shuttle. The aliens opened fire with their full arsenals, expecting easy victory. Instead, their weapons were absorbed harmlessly by the human vessel's defensive systems. The Corvin Imperial fleet entered human space with hostile intent, so he continued. They ignored our diplomatic warnings and chose to attack our vessel. This recording shows the consequences of that decision. The camera captured the moment when the Silent Thunder dropped its disguise and revealed its true nature. The small shuttle transformed into a sleek predator bristling with weapons that seemed to bend light around them. Then came the firing of Project Mjolnir, 8 beams of impossible light that erased the alien warships from existence. Let me be perfectly clear, so he said as the recording showed the last Corvin vessel vanishing without a trace. Humanity seeks peaceful coexistence with all sentient life in the galaxy. We have no desire for conquest or expansion beyond our current territories. However, any attempt to threaten, subjugate, or harm human colonies or citizens will be met with absolute retaliation. She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle. When she continued, her tone was even more serious. What you have witnessed here is not our most powerful weapon. It is simply the one we chose to reveal today. Earth possesses defensive capabilities that far exceed what any galactic civilization has previously encountered. We have prepared for this moment for many years. The display switched to show the Silent Thunder in its fully revealed form. No longer disguised as a harmless shuttle, it appeared as a vessel of elegant but deadly design. Its hull seemed to drink in starlight, and weapon ports covered every surface like the scales of some cosmic predator. To those who would choose the path of peace, humanity extends our friendship and offers of mutual cooperation. To those who would choose the path of aggression, we offer this single warning: reconsider your intentions very carefully. Behind the camera, Engineer Jaewon Park monitored the quantum communication arrays that would broadcast this message across the galaxy. The transmission would reach every major civilization within hours, carried on frequencies that could not be blocked or jammed. This message is being sent to demonstrate that humanity is no longer hiding our true capabilities. We have emerged as a spacefaring civilization, and we will take our place among the galactic community. That place will be determined by how others choose to interact with us. So he stood up, and the camera pulled back to show her full figure against the backdrop of empty space where a mighty fleet had once threatened Earth's interests. The age of human weakness is over. We will defend our people, our worlds, and our future with every resource at our disposal. Choose wisely how you respond to this new reality. The recording ended, and Minho began the process of transmitting it across the galaxy. The message would be received by the Galactic Council within 6 hours. Every major military command, every diplomatic corps, every intelligence agency in known space would soon be analyzing what they had witnessed. Navigator Dong-Ho Choi looked up from his sensor display. Captain, we're receiving multiple long-range communications. It appears word is already spreading about what happened here. What kind of communications? So he asked. Mostly military frequencies. Several species are recalling their fleets from planned operations near human space. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium is requesting immediate diplomatic contact. Even the hegemony is asking for a ceasefire on disputed border territories. So he wasn't surprised. The destruction of the Corvin fleet would send shockwaves throughout the galactic political structure. Species that had been preparing to attack human colonies were suddenly reconsidering their plans. Others were rushing to establish peaceful relationships before humanity decided they were threats. Any hostile responses? She asked. Not yet, Captain. I think everyone is too shocked to respond with aggression. They're all trying to figure out what this means for their own civilizations. Weapons specialist Hana Lee smiled as she checked her instruments. Project Mjolnir is fully recharged and ready for immediate deployment. If anyone decides to test us, we'll be ready. But so he suspected that wouldn't be necessary. The demonstration had been designed to be overwhelming, undeniable, and terrifying. Any species with the intelligence to achieve spaceflight would understand the message clearly. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Minho, are you receiving any responses to our broadcast yet? Several, Captain. The Galactic Council is requesting immediate talks. The Corvin High Command is, well, they're offering complete surrender and reparations for the attack. The Andromedan Empire wants to discuss a mutual defense treaty. So he nodded. This was exactly what Earth Command had hoped would happen. Instead of fighting a dozen different wars against various alien civilizations, humanity had demonstrated their power once and changed the entire political landscape of the galaxy. Send a reply to the Galactic Council, she ordered. Tell them that Earth is willing to participate in diplomatic discussions, but any talks must include formal recognition of human sovereignty over our current territories. What about the Corvin surrender offer? Forward it to Earth Command. Let them decide how to handle that situation. As the Silent Thunder continued on its course toward Earth, space around them began to fill with more ships. The human vessels that had been hidden throughout the system were now revealing themselves, no longer needing to maintain secrecy. The fleet that became visible was impressive. Dozens of advanced warships, each one equipped with technology that most galactic civilizations couldn't imagine. Support vessels, carriers, mobile construction platforms, everything needed to establish human dominance over this region of space. My God, Dong-Ho whispered, as he watched the ships decloak.
How long has Earth been preparing for this?
25 years, so he replied quietly. Ever since we made first contact with the Centauri Republic and realized how dangerous the galaxy really was. Every human colony, every research station, every diplomatic mission has been gathering intelligence and preparing for this moment. The truth was that humanity had been playing a carefully orchestrated deception for decades. While appearing to be a weak, primitive species struggling with basic interplanetary travel, Earth had been secretly developing weapons and tactics far beyond anything their neighbors possessed. Captain, Engineer J1 called out, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout human space. It looks like the entire home fleet is powering up, so, he smiled. The final phase of the plan was beginning. Throughout human territory, hidden bases were revealing themselves. Secret shipyards were opening their doors. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as civilian stations were showing their true nature. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity hadn't sent just one advanced warship to deal with the Corvin threat. They had built an entire fleet of vessels like the Silent Thunder, each one capable of erasing enemy forces from existence. Earth had prepared for galactic warfare on a scale that no other civilization had ever attempted. Set course for home, so he commanded. Our demonstration is complete. Now begins the real work of establishing humanity's place in the galaxy. The Silent Thunder engaged its faster-than-light drive and vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind only empty space and the echoes of a message that would reshape the balance of power among the stars. Behind them, alien civilizations scrambled to adjust to a new reality where humanity was no longer the weak species they had believed them to be. The galaxy had expected a shuttle carrying frightened diplomats. Instead, Earth had unleashed a machine of total annihilation and announced that the age of human dominance had begun.